Hey everyone, my name is Emily, and today I want to share a story that changed my life forever. It's a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and a discovery that shook me to my core. Before we dive into it, if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. I was 27 at the time and thought I had my life figured out. I had a stable job at a marketing firm, a cute little apartment in the city, and a boyfriend, Eric, who I thought was my forever. Eric was charming, intelligent, and had this way of making me feel like the only woman in the world. After dating for 4 years, I truly believed he was the one. We weren't perfect, of course. We argued about silly things like whose turn it was to do the dishes or what to watch on Netflix, but we always made up. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, there were signs, small things I ignored because I trusted him so completely. It all started one Friday evening. I had planned a quiet night in, just the two of us. I made Eric's favorite pasta dish and even picked up a bottle of wine to celebrate a big promotion he had recently received. He came home later than usual, claiming he'd been stuck in a meeting, but something felt off. His tie was slightly crooked, and he smelled faintly of perfume, something floral that I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, he laughed it off, saying one of his coworkers had hugged him goodbye after the meeting. I let it go because, well, why wouldn't I? Eric wasn't the type to cheat, or so I thought. That night, as we sat at the dinner table, he seemed distracted. His phone buzzed a few times, and each time, he glanced at it but didn't pick it up. Normally, Eric wasn't secretive about his phone. We'd scroll through memes together or laugh at silly texts from his friends. But this time, he turned the screen face down, his smile looking forced every time I tried to engage him. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the gnawing feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. After dinner, while Eric was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I checked his phone. It was wrong, I know. I'm not proud of it, but at that moment, curiosity and suspicion took over. His passcode hadn't changed, so I unlocked it easily. The first thing I saw was a message from someone named Mia. It wasn't just one message, though. It was an entire thread, dozens of texts filled with heart emojis, inside jokes, and plans to meet up. My hands trembled as I scrolled further, each message cutting deeper than the last. One text read, "Can't wait to see you again, baby. Last night was amazing." My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Was this the same Eric I had spent 4 years building a life with? How could he do this to me? Just then, I heard the shower turn off. My heart raced as I quickly locked the phone and put it back where I found it. My mind was spinning. Should I confront him right away? Pretend I didn't see anything? I wasn't sure what to do, but one thing was certain. This was just the beginning. As Eric walked out of the shower, humming a tune like nothing had happened, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Every part of me wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but I froze. How do you confront someone when your entire world is crashing down around you? He smiled at me, that same smile I used to find so comforting. "That was amazing, babe. Dinner was perfect," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. I forced a small smile, pretending nothing was wrong. Inside, though, I was a storm of emotions, anger, confusion, heartbreak. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Eric sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, while I stared blankly at the TV. My mind kept replaying the texts over and over. "Last night was amazing." The words felt like a dagger, twisting deeper with every thought. The next morning, I decided I needed answers. I couldn't just sit there pretending everything was fine.
But I wanted to be smart about it.
Rushing in with accusations could backfire, especially if he denied everything. I needed proof, something concrete. Eric left early for a supposed work meeting, and I used the opportunity to dig deeper. I knew it wasn't the healthiest way to handle things, but I felt like I had no choice. I opened his laptop, which was synced to his email. What I found only made things worse. There were emails between him and Mia, flirty, suggestive, and filled with plans that didn't leave much to the imagination. Dinner reservations, hotel bookings, even a shared playlist titled Our Songs. It felt like a slap in the face. Songs we'd once danced to now belonged to someone else. But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A reservation for 2 at a restaurant downtown, dated that evening. They were planning to meet tonight. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding. This was it. I had the proof. Now, the question was, what was I going to do about it? I thought about confronting him the moment he got home. But another part of me wanted to catch him in the act. Maybe it was the hurt talking, but I felt like he needed to see what it felt like to be blindsided, just as I had been. That evening, I dressed carefully, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed to feel strong. I threw on a black coat and headed to the restaurant. My stomach churned with every step. When I arrived, the hostess asked if I had a reservation. No, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but I'm meeting someone. Scanning the room, it didn't take long to find them. Eric sat at a candlelit table, laughing with a woman who could only be Mia. She was stunning, long blonde hair, perfect makeup, the kind of beauty that makes heads turn. But all I could see was betrayal. I stood there, frozen, as a wave of emotions hit me. Anger, sadness, humiliation. Part of me wanted to march up to their table and expose him in front of everyone. But another part of me felt too small, too broken. Before I could decide what to do, Mia leaned across the table and placed her hand over Eric's. He didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled at her in the way he used to smile at me. My hands clenched into fists as I turned and walked out of the restaurant. Confronting him could wait. Tonight, I needed to figure out what came next. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling in my apartment, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eric's face, smiling at Mia like I didn't exist. It felt like I was caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. By morning, I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't pretend I didn't know what was happening. But I also couldn't rush into a confrontation without knowing exactly what I wanted to say. I needed clarity. After hours of going back and forth in my head, I decided to call my best friend, Sarah. Sarah and I had been friends since college, and she was one of the few people I trusted completely. She picked up on the second ring, her voice cheerful as always. "Emily, what's up?" she said, but the moment she heard my shaky response, her tone shifted. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I poured everything out, the texts, the emails, the dinner reservation. I told her about standing in the restaurant, watching Eric and Mia, as if I were invisible. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard I could barely get the words out. "Emily," Sarah said softly, her voice filled with concern. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say. He doesn't deserve you. None of this is your fault. But what do I do?" I asked, wiping my tears. "Do I confront him? Do I just leave?" Sarah was quiet for a moment before saying, "You need to think about what you want. Not what he wants, not what anyone else thinks. What do you need to feel okay again?" Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. What did I want? I wanted the truth. I wanted to look Eric in the eyes and hear him admit what he had done. I wanted him to feel the pain he had caused me. That evening, I waited for Eric to come home. When he walked through the door, carrying a bag of groceries like everything was normal, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Where were you last night?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. He looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I told you. I had a late meeting." "Don't lie to me, Eric," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I was at the restaurant. I saw you with her." For a moment, he just stood there, frozen. Then he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Don't," I snapped, cutting him off again. "I've seen the messages. I know everything." His face paled, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "I can explain," he stammered. "Explain what?" "That you've been sneaking around with someone else while pretending to love me? That you've been lying to my face for God knows how long." Eric opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Finally, he looked away, his shoulders slumping. "It just happened," he said quietly. "I didn't mean for it to, but..." "But what?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" You didn't mean to betray me?
Silence. That was all he gave me.
I stared at him, the man I had loved for 4 years, and felt something inside me break. The anger I had been holding onto turned into something colder, sharper. I realized then that the person standing in front of me wasn't the man I thought I knew. I want you out, I said finally, my voice steady. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. Eric's eyes widened. Emily, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about, I said, turning away. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. As he gathered his things and walked out the door, I felt a strange mix of emotions, pain, relief, and a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in days. Strength. The moment Eric walked out of the door, the silence in the apartment was deafening. For 4 years, he had been a constant presence in my life. Now, all that was left was emptiness, and the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. I should have felt free, proud even, for standing up for myself. But instead, I felt a crushing weight on my chest. The man I loved, the man I thought I would spend my life with, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I spent the next few days in a haze. I barely ate, barely slept, and couldn't bring myself to go to work. Sarah checked in constantly, offering to come over or take me out, but I wasn't ready to face the world. I needed time to process everything. One night, as I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Eric. I know I messed up, Emily. Please, can we talk? Just once. My stomach turned. Part of me wanted to delete the message and block his number. But another part of me, maybe the part that still loved him, wanted to hear what he had to say. Against my better judgment, I replied,
Fine.
Tomorrow at noon. Coffee shop on 5th. When the next day came, I regretted agreeing to meet him. My heart raced as I walked into the coffee shop, scanning the room until I spotted him at a table near the window. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup. As I sat down, he gave me a weak smile. Thanks for meeting me, he said. I didn't respond. I just stared at him, waiting for him to explain. Emily, he began, his voice soft, I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Don't, I said, cutting him off. Don't sit here and tell me you love me after everything you've done. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. His face fell, but he didn't argue. You're right, he admitted. I made a mistake, a huge mistake.
But it wasn't about you. It was about me.
I was unhappy, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix things, you decided to cheat? I don't expect you to understand, he said, looking down at his coffee. You're right, I said, my voice steady. I don't understand. And I never will. You didn't just hurt me, Eric. You destroyed everything we built together. For what? A fling. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. Mia, she made me feel. Don't, I snapped, cutting him off again. Don't you dare try to justify this by talking about how she made you feel. You made your choice, Eric. And now you have to live with it. For a moment, we sat in silence. I could see the regret in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. Regret doesn't undo the damage. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said finally. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. I nodded, standing up to leave. Thanks for the apology, I said, my voice cold. But it doesn't change anything. We're done, Eric. For good. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the kind of closure I wanted. It would never erase the pain, but it was enough to let me take the first step toward moving on. That night, I deleted his number, blocked him on social media, and removed every photo of us from my phone. It was time to start a new chapter, one without him. The first week without Eric was the hardest. I kept expecting him to walk through the door, flashing that familiar smile, or to call me just to say he missed me. But of course, none of that happened. And I had to remind myself over and over again that even if it did, it wouldn't mean anything. Sarah became my rock during that time. She came over every evening bringing takeout or wine or both and forced me to talk about how I was feeling. At first, I resisted, but eventually it all started pouring out. "I just don't understand how someone can pretend to love you while lying to your face," I said one night, tears streaming down my cheeks. Sarah sighed, handing me a tissue. "Some people are good at hiding who they really are," she said. "But you know what? That's on them, not you. You deserve so much better, Emily." Her words helped, but the healing process was slow. Every little thing reminded me of Eric, our favorite TV shows, the mug he always used for coffee, even the sound of keys jingling in the hallway. It was like trying to piece together a shattered vase, knowing it would never look the same again. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to feel a little stronger. I threw myself into work, volunteering for extra projects and staying late at the office just to keep my mind busy. I also started going to the gym, something I'd always meant to do, but never got around to. It felt good to channel my energy into something productive. One day, as I was scrolling through social media, I came across a post from someone who had been through a similar experience. They talked about how they had found healing by focusing on themselves and rediscovering who they were outside of their relationship. Their words resonated with me. Who was I without Eric? I had spent so much of the past 4 years being Emily and Eric that I had forgotten who just Emily was. I decided to start small. I made a list of things I used to love but had stopped doing: reading, painting, baking. Over the next few weeks, I slowly started incorporating them back into my life. One weekend, I dusted off an old sketch pad and spent hours drawing by the window. Another night, I baked cookies for the first time in years, laughing when the first batch came out burnt. It wasn't much, but it felt like I was reconnecting with a part of myself I had lost. Then one evening, Sarah dragged me to an art exhibit downtown. I wasn't thrilled about going. I wasn't ready to be around so many people, but she insisted. "You need to get out of the apartment," she said. "Plus, I think you'll really like this one." As we walked through the gallery, I found myself drawn to a particular painting. It was a swirling mix of blues and yellows, chaotic but beautiful. It reminded me of how I had been feeling, broken but slowly piecing myself back together. While I stood there, lost in thought, someone spoke behind me. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I turned to see a man about my age, dressed casually but with an air of confidence. He smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled back. The man introduced himself as Ryan. He had a warm, easy smile and a calm presence that instantly put me at ease. "It's my favorite piece in the exhibit," he said, nodding toward the painting. The artist said it's supposed to represent finding beauty in chaos. I looked at the painting again, seeing it in a new light. "That's exactly how it feels," I said, surprised at how much it resonated with me. We stood there for a few moments, talking about the exhibit and our mutual love for art. I learned that Ryan was an architect who dabbled in painting as a hobby. There was something about the way he spoke, so genuine, so thoughtful, that made it easy to talk to him. When Sarah came over, clearly curious about the stranger I was chatting with, Ryan excused himself with a polite, "It was nice meeting you, Emily. Maybe I'll see you around." As he walked away, Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Who is that?" she asked, a teasing smile on her face. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just someone who likes art." But even as we left the gallery, I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected: hope. Over the next few days, life started to feel a little brighter. I wasn't sure if it was because of Ryan or because I was finally starting to let go of the pain Eric had caused me. Either way, it felt good. I threw myself into my hobbies, spending hours painting and experimenting with new recipes in the kitchen. I even signed up for a pottery class, something I had always wanted to try, but never had the time for. On the first day of class, I was surprised to see a familiar face. Ryan was there, sitting at one of the tables with a lump of clay in front of him. He looked just as surprised to see me. "Emily," he said with a grin. "Fancy seeing you here?" I laughed, feeling a little self-conscious. What are the odds? We ended up sitting next to each other during the class, laughing at our failed attempts to shape anything resembling a pot. It was light, easy, and exactly what I needed. After class, Ryan asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I hesitated for a moment, but then I thought about the progress I'd made over the past few weeks. I wasn't completely healed, but I was getting there. Sure, I said, surprising even myself. Over coffee, we talked about everything, our jobs, our favorite books, and the little things that made us happy. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just be myself without the weight of my past holding me back. By the time we said goodbye, I realized I was smiling, genuinely smiling. Maybe this was the start of something new. Or maybe it was just a reminder that life goes on, even after heartbreak. Either way, I was finally beginning to believe that I could move forward. Over the next few weeks, Ryan and I started to see more of each other. It wasn't intentional at first, just a few chance encounters at the pottery class or around town, but each time, we'd end up talking for hours. There was something refreshing about him. He didn't press me for details about my life, didn't pry into my past, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me for who I was. One afternoon, after class, he asked me if I'd like to join him at the park. It was a beautiful day, the kind where the sun felt warm on your skin, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. I hesitated for a moment, still unsure about letting someone new into my life, but something about his easygoing smile made it hard to say no. We grabbed coffee and walked through the park, talking about everything and nothing. Ryan told me about how he got into architecture, his love for hiking, and how he'd always wanted to learn to play the guitar but never found the time. "What about you?" he asked, glancing at me. "What's something you've always wanted to do?" The question caught me off guard. For so long, my dreams had taken a backseat to my relationship with Eric. I hadn't even thought about what I wanted for myself. "Honestly," I said after a moment, "I've always wanted to travel. See new places, experience different cultures. But I guess I never made it a priority." Ryan smiled. "You should. There's nothing like stepping out of your comfort zone and seeing the world from a new perspective." His words stayed with me long after that day. Maybe it was time to start thinking about what I wanted, not just in a relationship, but in life. But just as I was beginning to feel like I was finally moving forward, the past came rushing back to haunt me. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw a notification that Eric had tried to call me. I had blocked his number weeks ago, but somehow, he had found a way to reach me. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the voicemail icon. Part of me wanted to delete it without listening, but curiosity got the better of me. "Emily," his voice said, shaky and almost desperate. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. Please. Just one more chance. I need to explain everything." I sat there, my heart pounding. Why now? Why was he trying to come back into my life when I was finally starting to heal? I knew I didn't owe him anything. I had already made my decision to move on. But the message left me unsettled, as if the wounds I had worked so hard to close were starting to reopen. I decided not to respond. Eric had already taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let him derail the progress I had made. Instead, I focused on the things that made me happy, my art, my friends, and, increasingly, Ryan. He was becoming a constant presence in my life, and I found myself looking forward to our time together more and more. One night, after a particularly fun pottery class, Ryan walked me home. As we stood outside my apartment building, he hesitated for a moment before saying, "Emily, I really enjoy spending time with you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Me too." There was a pause, and then he added, "I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush anything. But if you're ever ready, I'd like to take you out. A real date." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me was terrified of opening myself up again, but another part of me, the part that had been slowly healing, wanted to take the leap. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think I'd like that." Ryan's smile was brighter than anything I had seen in a long time. The day of my first date with Ryan felt surreal. It had been years since I had been on a first date, and even though I tried to stay calm, I couldn't ignore the butterflies in my stomach. Sarah, of course, was ecstatic. "This is a big step, Emily," she said over the phone as I got ready. "You deserve to be happy, and Ryan seems like a great guy." I smiled at her encouragement, though part of me was still hesitant. What if I wasn't ready? What if opening myself up again just led to more heartbreak? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I wasn't going to let fear control my life anymore. Ryan picked me up right on time, looking effortlessly handsome in a casual button-down and jeans. He greeted me with his usual warm smile, and just like that, the nerves I had been feeling all day began to fade. We went to a cozy Italian restaurant downtown, nothing fancy, but it was perfect. The kind of place where the staff made you feel like family and the smell of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. Over dinner, we talked about everything. Ryan told me about his childhood, his family, and how he had spent the past summer hiking the Appalachian Trail. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at ease. As the evening went on, Ryan turned the conversation toward me. "So," he said, leaning forward slightly, "what's something you've done recently that you're proud of?" The question caught me off guard. I wasn't used to people asking about me, not in a genuine way, at least. But Ryan's expression was kind and encouraging, and I felt safe opening up. "Well," I said, fiddling with my fork, "I started painting again. It's something I used to love, but I kind of lost touch with it for a while." His eyes lit up. "That's amazing. What kind of things do you paint?" "Mostly landscapes," I said, feeling a little shy. "But I've been experimenting with abstract stuff lately. It's cathartic." Ryan nodded. "I'd love to see your work someday, if you're comfortable sharing." His words were simple, but they meant so much to me. For the first time, I felt like someone saw me, not as a broken person trying to piece herself back together, but as someone worth knowing, just as I was. After dinner, we took a walk along the river, the city lights reflecting off the water. The conversation flowed easily, and I found myself forgetting about everything that had happened with Eric. For the first time, I wasn't defined by my past. As we reached the end of the path, Ryan turned to me. "Emily," he said softly, "I know you've been hurt before, and I don't want to rush you into anything. But I just want you to know that I'm here, however you need me to be." His sincerity caught me off guard. I felt a lump in my throat as I tried to find the right words. "Thank you," I said finally. "That means a lot." We stood there for a moment, the sound of the river filling the silence. Then, almost without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, and everything I hadn't realized I needed. When we pulled apart, Ryan smiled. "I guess this means I get to see your paintings after all." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe this wasn't just a step forward. Maybe it was the start of something new. The days that followed felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was genuinely happy. Ryan and I started spending more time together, and every moment with him felt effortless. He had this way of making me feel seen, like I wasn't just someone trying to rebuild herself, but someone whole and complete in my own right. One weekend, he came over to my apartment for the first time. I was nervous at first, but he immediately put me at ease, marveling at my small collection of paintings hanging on the wall. "These are incredible," he said, stopping in front of one of my abstract pieces. "You have a real talent, Emily." I blushed, brushing off the compliment. "They're nothing special. Just something I do to clear my head." Ryan turned to me, his expression serious. "Don't downplay yourself. These are amazing. You should be proud of them." His encouragement gave me a confidence I hadn't felt in years. We spent the rest of the afternoon painting together in my tiny living room. It was messy and chaotic, with paint splatters everywhere, but I couldn't stop laughing. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. A few days later, as I was heading home from work, I saw a familiar figure standing outside my apartment building. It was Eric. My stomach dropped. He looked up as I approached, his face filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret, desperation, maybe both. "Emily," he said softly, "please, just hear me out." I froze, every part of me wanting to turn and walk the other way. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I just wanted closure. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. "You have 2 minutes." Eric ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I know I'm the last person you want to see," he began. "And I don't blame you. I screwed up. I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to make up for. But I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I need you to know that I'm sorry." I stared at him, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to yell at him, to tell him his apology didn't change anything. But another part of me, the part that had loved him for so long, wanted to believe he meant it. "I've moved on, Eric," I said finally. "I'm building a life without you, and I'm happy. You don't get to come back and disrupt that just because you feel guilty." He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that you didn't deserve any of what I did to you. And I'm sorry for everything." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling a strange mix of relief and closure. For the first time, I felt like I could truly let go of the pain he had caused me. That evening, I told Ryan about what had happened. He listened patiently, his hand resting gently on mine. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Honestly," I said after a moment of thought, "I feel free. Like I'm finally ready to leave it all behind." Ryan smiled. "I'm proud of you, Emily. You've come a long way." As I sat there with him, I realized he was right. I had come a long way. And while the journey wasn't over, I knew I was finally on the right path. A few weeks after Eric's unexpected visit, I realized just how much my life had changed. The weight I had carried for so long, the heartbreak, the betrayal, felt lighter, almost like a distant memory. I had spent so much time trying to make sense of what had happened, but now I was focused on what lay ahead. Ryan had become an important part of my life. He didn't just fill the empty spaces Eric had left behind. He helped me create something entirely new. Whether it was painting together, hiking on the weekends, or simply sitting in comfortable silence, every moment with him felt genuine and healing. One evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, Ryan turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "you've been through so much, but you've come out of it stronger. That's something to be proud of." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I couldn't have done it without you," I admitted. He shook his head. "You've always had that strength, Emily. I just reminded you of it." His words stayed with me long after that night. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life, not defined by my past, but shaped by it in a way that made me stronger. It wasn't just about Ryan, though. I had rediscovered parts of myself that I thought were lost forever. Painting, traveling, and even small things like baking cookies on a lazy Sunday, I was learning to love my life again, piece by piece. One day, I decided to visit an art gallery where some local artists were showcasing their work. As I walked through the exhibit, I felt a sense of inspiration I hadn't felt in years. On a whim, I signed up to showcase my own paintings in an upcoming event. When I told Ryan about it later that evening, his face lit up with pride. "That's amazing, Emily. I can't wait to see your work up there." The day of the exhibit was nerve-wracking, but also exhilarating. As people admired my paintings, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. This was my story, one of pain, healing, and rediscovery, expressed through the colors and textures of my art. Toward the end of the night, Ryan walked up to me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I clinked my glass against his, feeling a smile spread across my face. "To new beginnings," I echoed. As the night went on, I realized how far I had come. The heartbreak I had once thought would define me was now just a chapter in my story, not the whole book. To anyone watching this, I want you to know that healing is possible. Life doesn't stop at heartbreak. It's hard, yes, and it takes time, but every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. If you're struggling, know that you're not alone. There's hope, there's light, and there's always a chance to start over. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And remember, your story isn't over. It's just beginning.